the great mercy of God is that he's not going to give us more than he knows that we can handle. D&C, I think it's 42:48. You have the faith to be healed, and you are not appointed unto death, you will be healed. I said, if God is going to say this, he must mean it, right? So similar perspective. Just ask yourself the question, what if I chose this? What if I came to this earth and this was my choice, that I needed to go through this at this time? How does that change your perspective?
And that's crazy to think of.
Welcome into another Key David podcast. I am joined by David the Lion, Douglas, Trevor the Keys, and we have an amazing guest for you. When I first met this guy, it's like his energy smacked me in the face. I was like, who is this guy? This guy is so cool. His name is Don Tarwater, and he had watched some Zion Media stuff, and he and I just clicked. It was so cool. Anyways, as I heard his story, I turned to Trevor. I'm like, can we get this guy on the show? Trevor's like, yeah, he's my homie. I got it. So excited to have you on, Brother Tarwater. Before we jump into what we're really going to talk about, I want our audience to kind of know who you are, kind of like your backstory, but I also want to really focus on, because this is an LDS-based podcast, kind of like your journey in the LDS faith. And then we're going to get the meat as to why we're having you on here. But I just want to give people some context so they kind of understand who you are. We have a lot of people on our show, from people that aren't members, are members, were members, different branches. And I just want people to know who you are. So Don, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Yeah, this is appreciate you guys having me on. Looking forward to it. Yeah. So my name's Don. I am the father of four, grandfather of four, and husband of one.
Beautiful.
I've been lifelong member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Grew up in the church. Where I grew up in Southern California, I was actually one of the, I think, 2 members of the church in my entire high school. And so living in Utah has been a huge cultural shift for me, as opposed to being part of the minority. You're definitely part of the majority and stuff like that. And yeah, it's been a wonderful experience.
And then did you serve a mission?
I did. Yeah, I actually served in Padova, Italy. So Tuscany region and northeastern Italy.
How's your Italiano?
It's not as good as it used to be. Just spent some time there last year. Takes a couple of days to get back in the swing of things, but there's nothing a little bit of pasta and pizza can't fix, right?
Don, what years were you in Padova? I had one of my best friends went to Padova.
Oh, really? Yeah, it was 92 to 94.
Brandon Pierce. I think he would have been 95 to 97.
Okay. Yeah, would have just missed him. Yeah, great mission.
Highly recommend. And Don, today you're an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I assume you're probably serving in various callings, or have had various callings, and are a temple goer.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, you
Strong.
You get in this life and strong in the faith. Yeah, you learn that there's a whole lot more to life than just being here. You're trying to be the best you can and take it very seriously. I've been given a second chance at life, actually even a third chance. And so, yeah, my goal is to live the best life I possibly can, doing the most good that I can while I'm doing it.
Okay. And I wanted to get some context, Trevor, because you and Don have known each other for a while. So Trevor, give us some context, and then let's jump into Don's story.
Yeah. Yeah, Don and I have been in the same industry in Utah. If you're in sales or operations, there's a chance you've worked with somebody that's done summer sales or direct sales. And Don is a genius on computers, it just super, super smart, and somebody who understands both operations and sales, which typically you need a Urim and Thummim to have the sales people talk to the operations people and, code and that type of stuff. And so our paths ran across each other a few times. And in 2016 or 17, Don had developed a Salesforce. People are familiar with Salesforce. We built a Salesforce for solar, and our company hired Don to help us launch Salesforce because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. And so got to spend some time with him and more time. Got to know him a little bit better, and he's like David. And what I mean by this is he's just a lovable guy. Like he's just so easy to get along with. It's someone who, like, when you hang out with him, you're like, I like hanging out. I like how I feel when I hang out with that guy. Just a really neat guy. And in 2009, 18, 19, somewhere like that,
Yep.
I was driving to Idaho Falls with a friend of mine. By the way, I think it's hailing outside, guys. I like
It
that.
is.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I hope it gets worse. Driving with a friend of mine, Ryan Higgins. Shout out Ryan Higgins. And he said, "Did you know Don Tarwater has stage 4 cancer?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, like he's like he's phasing out of the company that he's at, like he's preparing for death." And I was just like, "No, you kidding me?" And I, had lost a business partner to cancer 3 years prior to that. And I I had studied so many alternative, like, cancer things, from Rick Simpson oil to this dog dewormer called phenobarbital. What is it called?
Fenbendazole.
Fenbendazole, right? And in fact, after Shane and I met Dawn and we kind of told this story to Shane what happened, that day on Joe Rogan, somebody came on talking about this exact
True
dog dewormer.
It,
And
it was the Mel Gibson interview with Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
The same
And
day,
what-
the same time we were talking about it. Then we meet Don. Happened synchronicity.
Yeah. It was cool. And wasn't it his father that he said beat it? I can't remember. Or he said he knows several people. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
he had several friends that had beat it using fenbendazole and a couple other sources.
Okay. And so I was just like sick about it, driving home from Idaho Falls. And I'm like, I'm going to call Don and tell him about these things, And it's like, of course, everybody in the world has told him about every experimental treatment. And got a hold of him and told him. And I'll let him tell the story from there. So Don, tell us what happened as far as, like, how you found out about it, diagnosis. Did it come out of the blue? Were you losing weight? Like, walk us through the whole story of it, the
Yeah.
diagnosis.
And I want the spiritual stuff, just so you know. Like I don't want just this is what happened. I found this. I want what was going on with you spiritually, what was going on with your family spiritually as you tell this story. I want the spiritual stuff.
Absolutely. Well, this story actually goes back about 40 years. When I was a kid, my grandparents used to invite us out every 5 years, and there's me and a couple of cousins that would come, and we'd stay with them for a week. And during this particular trip, I was 10 years old at the time. We went to see the stupidest sci-fi movie you can ever see. It was called Crawl. And in this movie, Crawl, there's a Cyclops, and super low budget. If you guys have 2 hours of your time, you just want to go and waste, go ahead and watch it. But I don't recommend it, and don't blame me for it. But there's a Cyclops who had been cursed by a witch, or his people had been cursed by a witch, and they had been given the power of seeing the future. And the reason it was a curse is because the only future that they could see was the day that they were going to die. And for some reason, as a 10-year-old kid, I walked out of that movie saying, how cool would that be to know when you were going to die? And little by little, that actually came to me. And I actually knew from the time that I was 10, 12 years old that I was going to die from cancer, that it was going to be lung cancer, and that it would happen before I got to see my grandchildren. And so going through life for, 30, 40 years at the time or something like that, I knew exactly when and where this was going to happen. So fast forward, a couple decades, right?
Okay, wait, what? I never heard this. You were told you were going to die of lung cancer.
Yes.
How?
It just, I don't know. It's just one of those line upon line, precept upon precept things. You just kind of, learned a little bit more and stuff. I think the first part came in knowing that it was going to be lung cancer, and why lung cancer, I don't know. I just knew that that's what it was going to be. And then after a while, I knew when it was going to be as well. I knew I was not going to be there to see my grandchildren. And so as my kids start getting older, they start moving out of the house, getting married and stuff like that. It's just kind of like a wake up moment where you start to say, okay, hey, I'm approaching the end here. How's this going to happen? And there's a part of you in the back of your mind where you're saying, well, maybe I just got it wrong, right? Maybe these promptings weren't correct and I didn't get it. I didn't understand it properly or something. Well, during the summer of 2019, I had a cough that was developing. And for some reason in the office, and my team in particular, everybody was dealing with pneumonia. And I started to get this cough, and I just kind of kept telling myself it's pneumonia, 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 and it's just going to go away. And it started getting worse to the point of where I couldn't lay on my left side. When I laid on my left side, it felt like I was, being smothered. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't drown or whatever. And just kept on getting worse until I had this business trip. And I came back from the trip. It was on a Saturday. And my wife was up at Swiss Days. So this is August. What would that have been? It's end of August of 2019. And I was supposed to go up there and join her, but it wasn't supposed to be into the evening. So I asked myself a question. I can go home and I can do one of two things. I can go and mow the lawn, or I can go to the emergency room and get a shot for this pneumonia. And so I decided, hey, why not? I'm not really feeling it's a hot day outside. I don't want to do yard work. So I went to the emergency room instead. They took an x-ray and his comment was, right? He didn't want to give me a whole lot of feedback as to why he said, but this was just at one of those urgent care places. And so they sent me up to the Lone Peak Hospital here in Thanksgiving Point. And they proceeded to run a series of tests, CT scan and stuff. And I just remember it being an extremely dark room. There were no windows. The door had a little window into the door, but it was dark and they had a curtain in front of it. The doctor walked in with his nurse and he drew the curtain in front of the door and sat down. And that's when you know it's not going to be good. And before he opened his mouth, I knew exactly what he was going to say. He told me about the diagnosis of lung cancer. I said, okay, I've been prepping for this for, 4 decades now. What are we going to do to beat this? And he looks at me in the eye and says, I don't think you understand. Of all the cancers to get, this is not the one that you want. And so with that, he stood up, he walked out, he turned the light off for some reason. And so there's absolutely no light going in the room and stuff. And I can tell you that there's never been a moment when I felt more alone in my entire life. I'm sitting there and I'm pondering what's going on. What do I do now? I've known that this is going to be coming for all this time. My wife's up in Heber. She's, an hour and a half away. And the last thing that I wanted was to be alone because I was scared. When you get presented with the very high likelihood that you're going to be dying and it's going to be sometime very imminent, it causes a lot of things to come into focus. And so I just did the only thing I could think to do. And I started praying. And I prayed in particular that I wouldn't be alone, that somebody out there would show that they cared or something. And not 1 minute after finishing that prayer, I'm laying there in the dark. All the lights are off. Kind of, you feel like you're in outer darkness at the point. The phone rings, calling, just checking in to see how I was doing. Right then, I knew that was the answer to my prayer. I got home later that night, and then again, I was supposed to go up to Swiss Days to be with my wife. I didn't end up going. I asked through this friend because she was up there with his wife if there was any way that they could send her home early. I just didn't have the strength to talk to her. And so they kind of arranged cars and everything, and she came home. And she found me when she walked in the room. I was laying there on the bed because I didn't have the strength to do anything else. Just emotionally, I was completely drained. And as she walked in, the first words out of her mouth is she looks over at me on the bed. She said, "You better not tell me you have lung cancer." We had never discussed this before. We'd never, these words had never come up once in, the 20 plus years that we'd been married and stuff. And so in a way, in addition to me being prepared, she had been prepared as well. Right?
So you hadn't told her what you came. Yeah. Okay. Wow. That was one of my questions.
Yeah. And so anyway, the first couple days are a blur. Actually, you can go into a couple weeks, and like you were saying, Trevor, everybody and their dog is coming out of the woodwork and trying to offer advice and consolation and all that kind of stuff. And everybody, there's a lot of good people out in the world that just want to help and they don't know how. Had a good conversation with a man that actually was diagnosed. He ended up dying later on, but at the time he had been living with lung cancer for 4.5 years. And when the prognosis was on the outside, 90% of people die within 3 years. I thought 4.5 years was pretty good. And so I listened to talk to him, got some pointers from him. And then over the course of the next 3 months, I tried to implement some of the things. And anyway, just kept going downhill. I lost 40 pounds in 3 months, losing weight left and right. I fortunately had a very good team at work that was there kind of picking up the slack for me and stuff like that. But come December, my son got married and we were at the temple and I was sitting outside. I don't remember most of the day. And I wasn't even strong enough to walk into the room to be with my son. And so they had to come and pick me up. And I still get this confused. I know my wife came out to pick me up to like literally carry me in there. And I thought it was my son, but I believe it was my brother-in-law actually that was on my other arm, just kind of carrying me in. The rest of the day was a blur. And at the reception that night, I find out afterwards, I'm the kind of guy that likes to jump in and help, right? And especially if it's my son, my family, I'm the kind of guy I'm not going to ask for help. I'm just going to go and do it. Hanging light, doing the decorations, setting up chairs. That's going to be me. But I didn't have the strength to do any of that. So I just went and I found a bench and I just laid down and I slept while they did all that. And after the reception, I find that there's, people that had been going around talking and saying that they didn't think I was going to make it past the month. Wow. This was December 10th at the time. And, that really hit me hard. And so I went home that day after the reception, completely exhausted, drained and stuff like that. And I had to ask myself a question. And that question was quite simply, is this how it ends? Right? Is this the end of Don Tarwater's story? And right then and there, I made a decision. This is not how it ends. This is not how I'm going out. I know that I've known this for 40 years and stuff like that, but forget the language, but to hell with that.
I love the hell with it. You decided. I like that. Yeah. Now we don't have to submit. We can say, this is not my story. I'm writing this story. This is my plot. This is my story. And this is not how it ends. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. You just wrote your own story right there and then.
I did. And I took it a step further. And I was scheduled to go on a cruise with my wife and a couple friends at the end of March. And I told myself, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts about this, but I will be clear. Like the last scan I had just a week before, it was a PET scan and my body lit up like a Christmas tree. It was just everywhere. Said, I will be clear of cancer by the end of March when we go on this cruise. And I can tell you that happened. So
amazing.
Yeah. And that was when? When was that?
That was in March. So 3 months later.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So it led me on a path of discovery. I had to kind of figure out my stuff, figure out kind of what I believe is the formula. It pains me when people are going through cancer and they don't have that hope, like what you were talking about in the beginning, because I think that there is so much hope. There was a conference talk that was given. His name was Smith, Elder Smith, and he was talking about how his mom was dying from cancer and everything, and he described cancer as the disease of love. And when you're in the thick of this and somebody's telling you that cancer is the disease of love, that's the last thing you want to hear, because as far as you can tell, it's a very slow death, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, it is actually a very beautiful thing. I mean, any one of us can walk outside and just get hit by a bus, or a piano falls from the sky or whatever. I mean, there's 1,000 ways that we can die in a car wreck or something. And it's so instantaneous and we don't get the chance to kind of make things right. But with cancer, you're given a heads up that, hey, the end is coming. It is somewhat near. Get your life right. So if there are people out there that you need to apologize to or make things right with, or tell them that you love them or whatever, there are very few ways to go out that are as benevolent as cancer is.
I love that approach. I have never heard anybody with that approach. What a actually beautiful way to look at a crappy situation.
Yeah, and that helps it helps shift your life too, because when you look at cancer, you can either be the victim or you can be the victor. And it's very easy when you've got all these things, especially when you talk to oncologists. Oncologists are going to approach this 100% from a medical perspective that it's some random gene mutation, and there's very little you can do about it except for the traditional chemo, surgery, radiation, whatever the case may be, right? And it's up to you to make that decision that says, you know what? Yeah, maybe you do chemo, and maybe that's right for you, and you do radiation, you do surgery, whatever. I'm not here to say that that's not the right approach. I'm just saying for me, I decided to take a different approach with it, and that approach was I believed that my body had all the power to do what it needed to do. In in looking through this and stuff like that, I found out that the body is an amazing machine, and that there are some things from a physical perspective that you can do that help it, and that cancer actually isn't out there to kill you. There's a book by a guy named Andreas Moritz. I believe he's German or Swiss or something like that. Phenomenal author. He wrote a series of essays back in I'm gonna say it was the 60s or 70s, that come back and essentially say that cancer is not there to kill you, that no one has ever died from cancer. They died from the complications of cancer, but they haven't died from cancer itself. Because what cancer is the body is not there trying to create something that's going to kill it. The body's entire function, entire mechanism is there to preserve life. So if you look at cancer, cancer is doing the exact same thing. It's trying to preserve your life. And the way that it does this, especially like in a tumorous cancer or whatever, is it creates this shell around whatever is wrong in the body and is trying to protect the rest of the body with this shell. And, when we go out and we do things like biopsies, it's like we're popping that shell. When we do surgeries, we're cutting it open and stuff, and it lets it all out. But if you work with the body to do what it's trying to do, miracles can happen. And so, yeah, so that just kind of led me down my thing. My journey, I figured out that I call it the three-legged stool. There are three aspects to dealing with cancer. You deal with it from a physical, an emotional, and a mental perspective. And then at the top of that stool, the thing that holds the whole thing together is the spiritual. So just going through all that, Trevor was actually that phone call from you that day was very divinely inspired, because I had tried the RSO oil. In fact, I think it was you that told me about RSO, and it didn't work for me. It turned me into a zombie and stuff. I'm sure it works for other people, but for me, it didn't work. But when I got that fenbendazole, that was the first thing that I decided after that wedding reception that I was going to try. And that's what kind of set me down my path and my journey. And here I am 5.5 years later, strong. And I've actually beat it twice and learned stuff. And yeah, it's been awesome.
That's amazing. Talk to us about the three-legged stool a little bit more, and give some depth and some understanding for people that are dealing with this. Because as you're well aware of, when this happens, everything just turns into chaos, and you're just thinking of like, I'm going to die, right? And you're thinking of death preparations and what am I going to leave and finances and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, and at the same time, everyone in the world's coming to you with every treatment in the world, right?
Yeah.
You got to cut out acidity, like all of that stuff is happening at once. So walk me through somebody who's in the throes of this. Maybe they just got diagnosed, or they're battling it. They're in whatever stage that they're in. How do you organize the chaos and create that three-legged stool? Walk us through each of those steps.
Okay. You just said something that reminds me. So I have traditionally been a very healthy person. I've never had so much as a cavity in my life. Going to the doctor happens like once every 10 or 15 years prior to this and stuff like that. And a cousin of mine, and this is actually something that later played a very important part for my mental journey and stuff like that, and convinced me to get life insurance. So I'm just saying out there, if you are a family man, if you are a husband, if you are a father, you don't know when that end is coming. Make sure you take care of your family. Just get some, even if it's just term life insurance or something like that. Do something that takes care of your family.
Yeah, I got to tell you, term life insurance in my opinion, if you're around kind of my age,
Yeah.
it's cheap, it's affordable, it makes sense. You should have it. Thank goodness my brother-in-law, he fell off a cliff 2 years ago and died.
Yep.
And thank goodness he had term insurance.
Yep.
May cost you 50, $100 a month. You can get $1 million, couple $1 million. But I don't personally, and I've sold insurance, I've been licensed insurance, and the insurance guy will make the least amount of money on the term policy, but it will be the best thing for you. And so if they try to sell you universal life or any of these other things, just let them know you want term insurance and you can explore those other things at a later date. But get term insurance. You should have term insurance on you.
As a minimum. Yeah, my cousin actually was the one that talked me into it, and he said that life insurance is the bet that you want to lose, right? But what it allowed me to do is because I had that buffer on the back end, I knew that my family was going to be taken care of. The thing that I didn't have to stress over when I was going through this fight and stuff is how's my family going to live? How are they going to survive? Are they going to lose the house? Whatever. I knew that they were going to be okay. So as step number one, for those of you that aren't dealing with a major medical condition right now, if you don't do anything, don't take anything away from this podcast other than this insurance so that you can take care of your families, because you never know if or when you're going to actually need it. So from a physical perspective, again, the body is there and it's an amazing machine. It has the ability to do great, great things, and it wants to heal itself. It wants to actually make it it wants to live, right? That's its purpose. That's why we've been given this on this earth, is so that we can live. And so to think that there's been some type of mutation randomly inserted inside of us that's trying to kill us, just in my mind, it didn't make sense. And so as I searched, just boiling it down to the most simple things, you actually just hit on it very lightly there, Trevor. But cancer cannot survive in a well-hydrated, oxygenated, alkaline environment.
Say that one more time.
Cancer cannot survive in a well-hydrated, oxygenated, and alkalinized environment. What it is meant to do is where there's things dry, where it's death, where it is very acidic, and where it is very anaerobic, where there is no oxygen. That's where it thrives, because what it's trying to do is it's trying to do anything that it possibly can, and it changes, adapts, it does everything else, and it lives in these environments where nothing else can. So instead of giving the body an excuse to try and perpetuate the life of something that can live in a very strange environment, give the body a very healthy environment. And so
What are some of the things that people can do to stay, obviously drinking water, but is drinking hydrogen water better? How do we get more oxygen? Like, is it through running, exercise, breathing exercises? Give us some things that we can do to be healthier and dispel the cancer, because it's hard to survive in those conditions.
yeah, the simplest thing to do, and it tackles two of the three situations. It tackles the alkaline and it also tackles the hydrated, is to drink lemon water. So every day, I mean, you can see right here, okay, I've got, half gallon of water that I drink. That is, for that half gallon, there's a full lemon inside of it. I also put a little bit of sea salt in it to kind of augment that and stuff like that. But you drink it all, and you just force yourself. I mean, you can feel it as you're going throughout the day. I mean, it's noon and I'm halfway done. Just keep on chugging. And
You just confirmed something. We just got back from Kirtland and we went out there with Brad Wade, and I love Diet Coke. Like, I love Diet Coke with my lime. Like, that's my jam, right? And we're with this guy, Brad. And Brad is always like, I want a water and a bowl of lemons. And I thought, he doesn't just ask for one lemon. This guy's asking for a bowl of lemons. He literally takes these lemons, puts them in his water. He pours them into his hands. He goes like this. He puts it all over him. He's like dousing himself in lemons. So you just confirmed that lemons and water are something I need to incorporate into my thing. Maybe I need to unincorporate the Diet Coke with the lime and do more water and lime.
yeah, I was once told,
Or lemon. Sorry, lemon.
Yeah. Yeah, I was once told, and I don't know if this is true or not, but that there's one molecule that separates aspartame from formaldehyde. So there's unfortunately nothing that is healthy about a Diet Coke. In fact, it goes against the opposite. It creates more of an acidic environment in your body when we're drinking sodas, whether it's high fructose corn syrup or the artificial sweeteners or whatever. Um, and so, yeah, as you're looking to try and combat a serious illness, the first thing you got to let go of is soda, and that was such a
Don. You know, it's funny. Yesterday, I literally started a 33-day fast from all sodas.
good for you. Good for you.
I'm probably going to keep it up after talking to you.
I highly recommend it. It used to be my jam. Some people would take cigarette breaks. My thing to do, days gets really stressful and stuff, is I would go down to the Maverick and get myself a 32-ounce dirty Dr. Pepper with a donut. That was like my stress reliever and stuff. And so when I had to give it up, I don't say this thing lightly. I feel for everybody out there that likes their sodas, that likes their swigs and everything else. But it's just if you're trying to be healthy, there's no such thing as a healthy soda. So talking about the oxygen stuff, there are things you can do. Exercise is definitely one of them, especially when you're doing the HIIT training, the high intensity interval training, where you do big breathing. Wim Hof is another phenomenal mechanism. That
Yes.
if you're trying to get your blood super oxygenated, whatever you can do just to cause those carbon dioxide molecules to be expelled and the oxygen molecules to be inhaled. There's hyperbaric chambers that you can go inside of. There's a number of places around here that'll do that and stuff. But again, the secret to the whole thing is alkalinized, hydrated, and guys, that non-acidic. So yeah, hydrated, oxygenated, and alkalinized. So find those
Actually,
three.
so do you drink alkaline water? Is that
No, that's one of the beauties of the lemon water is lemon.
it creates?
We look at it and we say, oh, it's an acid, right? But when it hits your body, it actually alkalinizes. Other things you can do is there's a big movement about baking soda. Just drinking a teaspoon of baking soda and water every single day will do the exact same thing. There's entire studies that have gone out there showing how healthy that can be. So it also helps in your diet when you're looking at your foods and stuff like that. I used to be a very big meat eater. In fact, the last meal that I had before I got diagnosed was a big giant tomahawk steak, right? But the problem is that when you're eating those steaks, ask yourself the question, what does my body feel like for the next 12 to 18 hours, right? Your body puts so much energy into trying to digest that steak, and it's got to question, it's got to prioritize things. It can either put the energy into digesting your food or into healing. So for me personally, I want to put that energy into healing. And so, it started my journey as a vegan, back in the day having.
Wow. And for some people, vegan works. I know for other people that the carnivore works. And so let me just remind everybody, check with the Holy Ghost on what's best for you. Study it out. Ask the Holy Ghost. We're all made a little bit different. We come in different shapes, sizes, and all things. And what is good for one person might not be good for another person. So vegan, you may find, hey, that's best for you. Somebody else may say, hey, I've noticed, like Jordan Peterson talks about, the carnivore diet for him has cured him from all sorts of things. So find out what works for you and use the Spirit as your guide.
Yeah, use the Spirit as your guide and have that help you learn how to listen to your body. Because you're right. If I were to go back and do it all over again and stuff, I think I probably would have adopted more of a Mediterranean style diet or something like that. But you're right. Everybody's different. The way that everybody reacts is different. Every single type of cancer is different. But yeah, just you're gonna spend a lot of time on your knees, and you're gonna spend a lot of time in introspection trying to figure out what to do. And my path just happened to lead me down a vegan lifestyle that, trying to be very hydrogenated without soda, and it paid huge dividends for me.
Yeah, I can attest. Every single time I see Don, he's got this canteen of water. It's around this yay big. So the three stools, right? Like I'm seeing it as a pyramid.
Yeah.
Um, and on top of that pyramid is the spirituality, right? And the Egyptians actually used the teaching of the pyramid to basically show balance and harmony in their life. And that top benben, which was that top capstone of the pyramid, it's called the penben. They said that was the spirituality. And if you had these four cornerstones balanced for them, that you could access the divine, right? And so walk us through how in the world do you keep faith when you're dealing with that? Like, to me, like, I would just want to throw in the towel and just be like, dude, just let me go into the sunset. Like, what can you talk about there?
Yeah. So let me talk about the mental aspect of it first, and
Okay.
that'll actually lead to the spiritual. So, from the mental perspective, again, when somebody tells you that you are going to die, there is no bigger punch in the gut than that. We all know that there's no, none of us get out of this life alive, right? We're all going to die at some point. But when somebody tells you that the end is imminent, it is a very hard thing, a hard pill to swallow. And your mind goes to some very dark places because you're not ready for it. You want it to be on your terms. You want to be in charge and everything else. And sometimes life, maybe even God has different plans for you. So I tell you that, especially as you're fighting through cancer, 90% of the battle is mental, where you've got to go and get your head in the right space, because where your mind goes, your body will follow. And there's some things you can do, and especially we'll talk about this in emotional and especially from the spiritual perspective, to do it to get your mind in the right place. Probably the simplest thing to do is a vision board. And the reason for that is you have to come up with, what is your purpose? Why should you ask and receive a blessing from God that you are going to be able to spend more time on this earth? What is the purpose that He is going to be extending that life? If you don't have that answer yourself, how are you going to make that argument, right? If it's just, I'm here because I'm scared of what's coming next, that is a stupid answer, right? You've got to come up with your purpose, because I got to tell you, the other side is phenomenal. And when we get to the other side, we're going to be looking at this thing saying, why did I spend so much time on earth when I could have come back here and it had to be this phenomenal, right? But for me, I felt that there was still a purpose in my life that I hadn't accomplished. Again, my big thing was I really, really wanted to meet my grandchildren. I don't feel like I had been the best dad that oops, did I lose you guys?
Nope.
Okay.
I just bring on full screen.
I don't feel like I had been the best dad. I spent a lot of time working throughout my life, and I wanted to make that up and kind of have that second chance with my grandchildren. So my why was being able to see and be that grandpa to my grandchildren. And looking at that, I had to dig in deeper. Why else? Okay, sure, you want to be here for your grandchildren, but what else? If God has given you this second chance, what are you going to do with this second chance? And that's when I decided, I've always been a faithful member of the church. I've always been active. I've tried to magnify my callings and stuff, but I asked myself the question, what if? Could I do something more? Could I be something better? Could I be that example that I was always supposed to be? Were my priorities in the right place? And coming up with all those answers to me gave me the opportunity that when I was having those conversations with God, when I was kneeling in prayer and making my case and stuff like that, it became very clear to me why I needed more time on this earth. Then the next thing is, from an emotional perspective, it's a struggle. I mean, it is so hard. When you look at traditional Chinese medicine, when you look at the Indian cultures and stuff like that, they will tell you that the origins of most diseases are emotional in nature. And when you look at disease, when you look at what the body is, the body has a way of communicating. And emotions essentially are a way of using a bullhorn to tell you what's going on from a subconscious level. So, for example, when we cry, when that emotion is manifesting itself, is because from a subconscious level, there's something that's sad, right? Sometimes we know what it is, other times we don't, right? When you look at somebody, for example, that worries a lot. And they don't do anything about that worry. From a Western male culture, we're taught to shut up, rub dirt on it, and keep going about your day.
Bury it deep.
Deep, right? Exactly. But the problem with doing that is when you keep burying it, at some point the body says, I can't take it anymore. And it starts to yell louder. And from a worrying perspective, if somebody has anxiety, a very common ailment of people with anxiety is what? That their stomach hurts, right? They start to get stomach pains. If you don't deal with those stomach pains and you continue to worry, those stomach pains eventually develop into ulcers. And those ulcers keep going worse and worse and worse. How much easier would it have been, instead of going through all that pain of just burying, just listening to what those emotions were saying and actually dealing with it in the beginning and getting away from it? And so one of the tricks, and not the tricks, but is probably the hardest challenge that I had, is from an emotional perspective. I had a lot of stuff that I had been burying for so long that I just needed to get through. And so professional counseling helped, prayer helped, talking with my bishop helped. I mean, just there were things, talking with my wife helped, and became, closer with that. It's trying to be that better dad, trying to do things that didn't cause me to have so much, remorse or resentment or whatever. I had to deal with that from an emotional perspective. And when you're dealing with that, and the body's starting to say, okay, wait a minute, maybe I don't need to fight anymore. He's getting the message, and so I don't need to implore upon him these bullhorn announcements that, hey, you need to do something to change your life. My body started to say, hey, okay, he's getting this now, and so I can lay off a little bit, which is then would lead to the spiritual side of things. 2 Nephi 25:23 is probably my favorite scripture. Where
I got a question before you transition. Remember the Nephi thing? So I hadn't thought about this. And I just like when you're telling me, like, you're on your knees and you're like pleading with God, like, I kind of have like a little picture into that. And I can imagine that you're just like bargaining with your life with God.
Yep.
Like, that is just such a crazy conversation. And you're saying, if you don't really have your why, if you don't, if it's not whatever selfish reasons, you just want to live here longer and experience life more or whatever, like, if you really can find out what that why is and create some sort of higher purpose, potentially that motivates God, but really probably it motivates yourself.
It does. Yeah, it gives you that purpose, that reason to go on. I mean, because all you have to do, especially with something like a cancer, is just give up. If you let it take its course, it will take its course, and it's a beautiful thing, and it gives you that time to say the goodbyes and all that kind of stuff. But when your body understands that you've got no more fight in you, it's going to be very merciful to you and allow you to move on.
It's fast. I remember it was in April, and we were working a lot for business, and I got a call from Zach, and he goes, "Oh, geez, he goes, have you seen Curtis lately?" And I'm like, I haven't seen him in a couple weeks. And he goes, he's done. He's not going to make it. And he just knew, you could tell. And when I saw him, I could tell. And it was just a few months from then.
It is. Yeah. I mean, Curtis especially, I mean, he was so full of life, right? He was that light in the room that you walked inside of and you could see. But yeah, it doesn't matter. At some point when you just say, okay, I'm done, the great mercy of God is that he's not going to give us more than he knows that we can handle. And so he calls us home. And that's what he did with Curtis at that time. But on the flip side of this, if you decide that this isn't where it is, what is it? DNC, I think it's 4248. It says something to the effect that if you have the faith to be healed and you are not appointed unto death, you will be healed. I said, if God is going to say this, he must mean it, right? So why not take him at his word and say, you know what? I have the faith to be healed. I believe with my whole heart, my mind, and soul that I am going to get through this thing. And God, going back to that 2 Nephi 25:23, it's by grace that we are saved after all we can do. I'm going to do all that I can do. I'm going to do everything that I can do from a physical perspective. I'm going to get my head in the right space. I'm going to deal with my emotions so that my body doesn't have to yell at me anymore. And then I'm laying it up on the altar and saying, God, I need you to take the wheel and take care of the rest. And that's what it all comes down to. And being able to truly put your life in God's hands and saying, God, whatever your will is, I'm willing. I'm for it, right? I'm willing to fight. I'm hoping that your will is aligned with mine and that I want to stay on this earth for a little bit longer because I want to see my grandkids or do whatever X, Y, and Z is. I'm hoping that what it is, but I will accept yours. But in the meantime, as I'm trying to understand this, just listen to why. Okay. And yes, you do some bargaining, right? But a lot of that bargaining is with yourself, trying to figure out that purpose inside of yourself and saying what it is.
Don, can I bring something up? I do initiatories every Tuesday. I love the blessing that comes with the initiatories. I wear my garments diligently. I don't put them on the ground. I take care of them every day that I put them on. I am reminded that I am taking upon me the name of Jesus Christ. But one of the main blessings in the initiatory is that the destroyer will pass over you until your work is finished.
Exactly.
And I think because you have done all and you did all, the Lord said, hey, I got you, Don. And I am just a big believer. Like when we make that covenant to put those garments on, I even told my son, who's preparing to go to the temple, I'm like, hey, man, if you're not prepared to take on these covenants and wear these garments, like, don't do it. Like, you are better off not doing it than making that covenant, saying you're going to wear the garment every day as instructed, and then deciding at some point in your life to not do it. I'm like, just don't do it if you're not committed to doing it every single day. And it was the hardest thing for me for 62 months to be in prison without my garments.
They don't let you in prison?
No, they do not let you wear garments. You have to wear the state-issued underwear.
Wow.
So I remember telling my parents, I'm like, when you pick me up, bring me garments. And I was so grateful. When things get taken from you.
Yes.
And there's nothing you can do, you then appreciate the blessing that comes from wearing the garment. It is not a sacrifice. It is 1,000,000% a blessing. And I hope everybody hears the words of my mouth right now and take the garment serious. If you have decided to take your garment off for whatever reason, remember the covenant that you made. Put the garment back on. It is a shield and it is a protection to you against the destroyer. So if you want to stay here on this earth, put the garment on. If you don't, hey, you are left to your own means to figure it out. But I believe in that, and I believe that God honors his covenants with us when we make covenants with him. Okay, sorry, that's my spiel.
I appreciate that, and I could not agree with you more.
One thing I thought of, Don, before Shane said that, you mentioned, was it DNC? What was the DNC one?
42:48.
Remind me what that said again.
It says, if you have the faith to be healed and you are not appointed unto death, you shall be healed.
That's what it was. Not appointed unto death. Okay, so don't give up. Like, if you're watching this, if you have family members, don't assume you're appointed unto death. Because how would you know, right? Like, how would you know? And I believe that once you give up, right? We talked about this earlier, and you're just like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It comes so fast. And as Don said, it's almost merciful how fast it comes. Do not give up. Plead with God. Reassess your life. Look at your patriarchal blessing. Figure out what it is that you have not done. And if you must, bend the will of God towards you. That's not a sacrilegious statement. That is something being like, become more than you thought you're capable of and find a purpose to stay here.
Yeah. If I can add something to that helped change my whole perspective on this. is this was getting towards the end there in that December time period when I thought that the end was coming. And again, I always grown up in the church, always gone to Sunday school, served the mission, taught the plan of salvation, all that kind of stuff. But there's a part in the back of your head that asks the question, what if? What if this isn't right? Right? What if this isn't true? Do I truly have that burning testimony and stuff? What if I'm back on the wrong horse? And so by nature, my mind is very analytical. I like to see kind of like dominoes step up and, A leads to B leads to C, all that kind of stuff. And I said, how is there a scientific way that I can kind of approach this to find out if I'm backing the right horse? And one of the ways I determined to do that was with near-death experiences. By investigating what other people thought, especially non-LDS people, what they experienced and said, and asked myself the question, is that in alignment with what we're taught inside the gospel? And so I started scouring everywhere I possibly could. YouTube was a huge thing. There were books about it, everything, anything that I could find to talk about the near-death experiences that the people had had. If they were in alignment with the teachings of the gospel, then that would be a proof to me that the gospel, right? And so as I did that, I was amazed by how much alignment. It didn't matter if they were Buddhist, atheist, Catholic, Protestant, Islam, it didn't matter. They all seemed to come back with the same story that after this life, there's a life of love, where there's light, where we are surrounded by our loved ones and everything. And it just kept doing it. I kept going down this rabbit hole, looking deeper and deeper until finally I found this one video that a guy was talking, and he said, in addition to remembering his, having the near-death experience, he also remembered his premortal experience. And in the premortal experience, they were being taught about what to expect during this earth life. And they came into a classroom, they're sitting down, and the teacher was teaching them and saying, okay, well, this is what a physical body is. This is what pain is, how it works, pleasure. This is, why we go through all these things and what you're trying to learn and all that kind of stuff. And I got to tell you that there's going to be a chance, everybody here wants to come back and live with our Father in heaven again. And there's two ways that we can go about that. Option A is that we put you into a situation in life and we just kind of push you in the right direction. And you're born into a good family. You don't have a whole lot of trials and stuff in life, and whatever ones they are, they're just kind of minor and stuff. But your goal is ultimately, hopefully you're headed enough of the right direction that you'll get to where you're trying to get, which is back here, right? That's option A. There's a lot of risk to that because there's nothing to correct you as you're going through that. And if you head off in the right direction, you'll hit it. But if you ever make a detour, a curve during your life because you didn't want these trials and stuff, you could end up somewhere else. I said, or option B is, let me tell you about trials in life. There are things that we could place in your life that allow you to remember who God is and how much he loves you, to rely on him, to get on your knees, to have that faith and stuff like that. And then the teacher turns around and writes the word fibromyalgia on the board and explains fibromyalgia and how painful it is and how much of a trial it is and stuff, but how much that causes you to remember who you need and where you're coming from. And the teacher turns around and says, do I have any volunteers? And when I heard that, I knew that right there in that classroom before this life, I had raised my hand when they talked about lung cancer. I knew that at that point in my life, I was going to need something. I was going to need those bumpers in the bowling lane that kind of helped me come back to center. Again, I wasn't living a bad life, but I wasn't living the best life that I could. And that stint with lung cancer allowed me to say, hey, wait a minute, I could do better. Right? And it caused me to learn about ministering angels and how real they are. And that we've got people that are on the other side of the veil that truly care, have a vested interest in our success. And that we've got a Father in heaven that loves us. And he doesn't want to see us suffer. He wants to see us grow. And sometimes he gives us these challenges, like cancer, that allow us to do exactly that.
So love that. Hey, guys, I've got to bounce to another call. Trevor, if you can kind of just close this out. Don, it was so awesome to be on with you again. I look forward to the day where we get to go grab some lunch and catch up. But thank you for sharing your heart with us and your story and your testimony. And you are a walking testimony of the garment, in my opinion. So guys, take care. And Don, hopefully I'll see you later.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Shane.
All right. So did we get to the top of your stool?
We did, yeah. I mean, it's all been covered kind of superficially and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's spiritual. You got to put your life in God's hands. In a sense, you say, I've done everything I can. I've approached this from a physical perspective, from a mental perspective. I've done everything that I can. Emotionally, I'm right with myself, with my fellow beings, and with God. And God, I just need you to pick up the slack. Send me angels, send me somebody to help me out, help me get across that finish line to do the rest and stuff. And if it's appointed unto me to die, that's fine too. Help me accept that. But with the time that I have left, help me to prepare such that when I do return, it's going to be a joyous reunion and not one where I'm trying to hide under a rock.
Yeah, you hear a lot of cool stories of people that are living on borrowed time. And the things, this is emotional episode for me. The things that you can accomplish on borrowed time are incredible, right? Because you're just like, you got a new lease on life. And so it could be a great opportunity in the wait. Tell us advice for family and friends, right? Because it's like you have no clue what to do. You just want to suggest things and like kind of two things, like how should they deal with this just emotionally, spiritually, and then also like what kind of advice and help is helpful, for the family, for you, like what's helpful.
Yeah. So one thing that I've learned about, as I've been going on this journey and I've had the opportunity to talk with a lot of people that are going on a very similar journey, is the people on the outside, the people who aren't dealing with this, they just want to help. There's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of good, and they just don't know what to do. There's a certain subset of people that just want to be the one, right? They want to be the one that you confide in. They want to be the one that you're relying on. They want to be that one because that's how they feel helpful. But honestly, what you're doing when you're doing that is you're putting a lot of pressure on the person who's already going through a lot to try and help you get through something too, right? And so what I would ask that those people are there doing is don't ask, like, don't walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I just heard you have cancer. What can I do for you? Because all you've done is shifted another burden to them that now I've got to figure out something that I've been.
Yeah, you've given it to them, right?
Yeah. Right. Instead of asking, just do something, right? A very simple thing that we do inside of the LDS culture in particular is meals. Great. Bring food, right? There are very few things that food can't fix. And especially if it's food for your family, food for, whatever. There was one thing that I did one time. I went to, it was one morning I was at the hospital. I woke up and I was not feeling good. And I thought this was the end of stuff. Fortunately, it kind of wore off and I came back home. And when I got home, my entire yard was filled with friends, with people. They were doing my yard. The yard was something I still have this, but up there and to see 100 people with rakes and lawnmowers and tractors, and they're working in my kid's tree house. That one act alone did more to give me strength than all the, oh, I'm so sorry that I could have ever possibly heard. So
Yeah,
first thing is just don't ask, just do, right? If anything, come up with 3 or 4 ideas. Hey, a friend of mine came and I didn't even know he was a friend, right? We worked together and his wife had gone through breast cancer. And he said, I just want you to know that my team will be at your house every Saturday to mow your lawn for the entire summer. And I was like, that's fine. I don't need this. And he says, I don't care. I said, we're going to be there. And he was. They showed up and mowed my lawn every week. Right? Just
that's awesome. The funny thing is that those
Dude.
are the only things that I could think of myself when it's like, besides food, I'm like, okay, mow their lawn, do their snow removal. It's like, what can you really do? Like you're pretty limited. Is he cutting out for you, David? Yes.
Yes, years.
Okay, let's see if you're back, Don.
Yeah, sorry.
What more? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love-
What more can you? Food, yard, snow removal. Like, what else is that?
Take care of the kids. Like the kids have a baseball game or something like that. Do something where your kids are in the same thing. Just offer to drive kids. Do carpool, right? Sometimes, maybe somebody needs some groceries done or something like that. Maybe somebody's got a birthday coming up and, just haven't had the time to get the cake together or something. Just take an interest in their life and do it. Doing things for other members of my family, for example, showing up at one of my kids' games and just letting them know that they're loved and not alone and stuff like that. Just do something. A lot of times, again, we say, hey, just let me know. And that's what we do to kind of like get that burden off our chest. But
Yeah.
all we've done was transfer that burden. Don't do that.
Like, same thing happens at like a funeral. It's like I find myself doing it. I'm like hugging. It's like, is there, bless you, hug them. Is like, is there anything we can do? And you're exactly right. You're just like, you tell me how I can help you. It's like washing your hands of it. But yeah, that's
Walk up to them and give them a hug, right? If they take hugs, right? You just tell them you love them and stuff like that. But beyond that, let your actions speak for you.
That's great advice. Great advice. Okay, so for family members, like spouses, kids, parents, like, what do you do?
They when my wife was pregnant, I used to have this joke. They would always come up and ask my wife how she's doing. And I would mockingly get mad and say, hey, everybody asks her, but no one ever asks me. Right? I'm the one that has to deal with her grouchiness. She's always hungry. She's never comfortable. I can't go on dates anymore because she doesn't feel like it. It was always about me, right? It was a joke, right? But there was a level of sincerity to it as well. But when somebody's going through this, I look at my wife in particular. My wife, she is a rock, right? She is one of the most amazing women on the planet. And the things that she does to keep our family together and stuff, I can't imagine going through this life without her. But in all this that she's trying to do, well, she's trying to keep the family together, comfort the family, take care of me and everything. She's struggling, right? Or she's got a lot to go through. But very fortunately, she's got some other women in her life that are there to do the same thing I was just talking about. Where they would go and they would take care of the meals. They would take care of the carpools with the kids. Her favorite thing in the entire world is to take a walk with her friends. And so they would just be there in the morning, rain or shine, snow or whatever the case may be, just to go out there and take a walk with my wife, just so she has that chance to vent. From a kid's perspective, it's the same thing. It's just letting them know that they're not alone. And again, you're not asking, what can I do for you? You're just doing something. Sometimes kids just need to be taken out for a burger or ice cream. Just do it and don't argue about it.
Okay.
Right.
What about like emotionally, like your wife and like having to try to put on, I would imagine, you have to put on this facade, and she's trying to be strong for you. And she's just realizing that the whole thing's going to collapse on her and you're going to be gone, like any advice for spouses on just like hanging in there? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So there's a couple of friends that I've met along the way that have approached. They've been on the spouse side of things, right? Not the person dealing with cancer, but they've been on the spouse, and they've approached it from a different perspective, where it is very easy to focus on all the bad things that are happening in your life. Right? Why is God punishing us? Why is you making our life so hard and everything else? But this is a beautiful opportunity for you and your spouse to become closer than ever. So, number one, don't bottle it up, right? Deal with it. Find some outlet. If you're frustrated, let it be known, but do it in a loving way. Talk to your husband and talk about your fears. Talk about what you're afraid of, what's going to happen make the plans or whatever. But the two of you need to be in lockstep as to what the future looks like. If you're going to get through this, you're going to get through it together. If one of you thinks you're going to die and the other one doesn't, well, chances are you're probably not going to make it, right? But if both of you are on the same page, we're going to do whatever we can. We are going to make the most out of this life that we possibly can. So what does that look like? What does it look like from a financial perspective? What does that look like from a family perspective? What are we going to do to make whatever time we have together the most memorable for those and those we care about? So my wife is big on every single year, whether the money's there or not, we do a family reunion, right? And sometimes they're bigger than other ones and stuff like that, but she's trying to make memories. She's trying to make it so that our family stays together, so that if, heaven forbid, something were to happen to me in an untimely manner or something like that, the family's still there and they can pull together through it. When I first got diagnosed, my daughter was actually off doing a humanitarian trip. I believe it was either in Romania or Madagascar, somewhere on the other side of the world. And she's there alone, right? She doesn't have a mom or a dad or a brother or sister to hug her and stuff like that. But fortunately, she had a good friend that was out there. And again, it's just people going out there and giving those hugs and letting everybody know that they're loved and their concerns are valid, that their worries are valid, that they're not alone and they don't have to do this thing alone.
And then in closing, how do you talk to your kids about this? How old were your kids when this happened? What was your age spectrum?
My oldest would have been 20. And so my youngest would have been 15, 14. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Especially when they're not there in the home when you're doing it, right? I wish I could tell you that there's a magic formula where you just say A plus B man equals C and stuff like that. But your kids are going to take cues from your reaction to things. So if this is the worst thing that ever happened to you and God is cruel and life is unfair and all that kind of stuff, that's going to be their approach on it as well. There was a woman in our ward that recently passed away that if she didn't go straight to the celestial kingdom, I don't know who qualifies. I mean, her perspective, what she did with her kids, how they focused it, the way her and her husband approached it, it was so inspiring because she got it. She went at this with an eternal perspective and made sure that her kids understood as well. And I'm sure the kids are still struggling. I mean, mom's not here. It was right before Christmas that she passed away. And that's going to be hard on anyone. I don't care how strong you are and stuff like that. But with what strength and life and stuff that she had left, her and her husband were in lockstep, and they approached it together, and they were open and honest with their kids. So their kids knew what was going on. And they tried to make the most. They even had Christmas early so they could have one last Christmas together. It was, watching from the outside, it was probably one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. And so I'd say that just focus on what you can control. You can control how you perceive this. And by that perception, how your kids and those close to you perceive it as well. And
Yeah.
approach it as a beautiful thing.
I think that's great advice. I know two people who, one was really, really close friend of mine, and she lost her sister when her sister was 19 to cancer. She was 21. With 13 years, she was an atheist because of this. She hated God. She didn't believe in God.
Yeah.
And I think she always did, but she was bitter, and it poisoned her for 13 years, right? And robbed her of so many experiences. And, I believe that maybe there's a role for you to play in your friend, in your, brother, sister, whoever's life. And maybe they've left the gospel. Maybe they're dealing with this thing alone. And, try to find a way to seal those up around you and make it this, this positive experience, like you're saying, and make it a faith affirming thing. Because, what a tragedy to lose someone and then to completely lose your faith. Like it ruined her for a while. And then I have someone on the other opposite side who's caretaker to her brother. And, every single day, the last 2 weeks, she's in the hospital. They're Catholic, and she's reading the Lord's Prayer to him, and bringing the scriptures, and her experience is so much different, and so I feel like there's so many things that we can do, and I appreciate you coming on, Don, and telling your story, man. I'm so happy for you, and I mean, you literally are a walking, breathing miracle right now. So
I appreciate it. It's just that, I look at this thing as being the greatest blessing of my life. Had I not had this, there was so much that I wouldn't have known, wouldn't have learned, wouldn't have experienced and stuff like that. And I just hope that other people that are going through this, that they're able to take a similar perspective. Just ask yourself the question, what if I chose this? What if I came to this earth and this was my choice, that I needed to go through this at this time? How does that change your perspective?
that's crazy to think of.
Yeah, and the body's an amazing machine. There are very simple things that we can do. Touched on fenbendazole, ivermectin's another one, methylene blue. I mean, there's things that are out there that have.
We just got methylene blue today.
There you go. There you go. There's things out there that make it very possible to beat this thing. But put yourself in the right place. Treat your body as a temple. So from a physical perspective, nothing goes in your body that you wouldn't put inside of a temple. Deal with your emotions, get your head in the right place, and then just turn it over to God and become extremely close with him and say, hey, lead me, guide me, help me understand what else. And bless the people like Trevor Keys in my life that know something that I don't, that can help guide, put me on the right path. And you'll be amazed at the miracles, the true miracles that happen in your life.
Yeah, there's a proverb that says, "Physician, heal thyself." All right, and it's in our wheelhouse. I mean, this is an amazing machine, and we have the ability to heal ourselves. And by telling these stories, and by bringing people on like Dawn, bringing Owen on, Makaya earlier, we hope to inspire. We hope to prove unequivocally that there are solutions out there, that this is not a death sentence. And we're in the most incredible time that humans have ever lived on this earth. They have mRNA technology that is killing cancer right now, and this thing that we got so scared about in this COVID vaccine, this mRNA, they're using this technology to literally go in and deconstruct the cancer molecules on a cellular level and kill these things. And there are hundreds of companies developing these things right now. Hundreds. There's 10 of them that are billion-dollar CapEx, publicly traded companies. They know their cancer is going to be defeated. And I think in the next 20 years, it'll just be like, oh, he's got cancer. Okay, he's got to, find which type of cancer it is, find out how to get your body in homeostasis and then beat it, right? And we're here, people. If you're hearing this message, there's hope. You can have faith, and there are solutions that are here today, and there are more and more and more that are going to be coming. So don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. If you're listening to this, if you're a Zion Media watcher, and you yourself have beat cancer, if you have family or friends that have beat cancer, we'd love to hear the story, right? You can do it anonymously. We have a contact us form. You can go in, you can leave that story. If you want to come on and share your story like Don did to help build up that faith and that hope, we would love to platform you and hear this story. It's been one of my favorite podcasts we've done in a long time. So thanks for coming on, Don. David, thanks for being at the wheel. And for the Key of David podcast, for Shane, myself, David, and all of us at Zion Media, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
I feel the weight, I feel the storm, trying to stand, but I'm so worn. Tell me, God, do you hear me now? I can't breathe, I'm breaking down.
I've been walking through the fire, trying to keep my soul intact. Every time I climb the ladder, feel the devil pull me back. I've been praying, I've been fighting, I've been searching for the way, but it's hard to hear the answers when the world too loud to pray. Hey, I've been watching all the pain in my city, seeing good ones fall, while the wicked stay winning. Tell me why the lost still roam, why the righteous feel alone, why the truth feel distant when I'm crying on my own. I I got dreams, I got visions, but the pressure's getting strong. Trying to walk the narrow path, but the road feel long. Every promise in the book say the light gon' shine, but my heart's still heavy, need a sign, need a sign.
I can't breathe, I can't see. Every burden's weighing me. Lost in silence, drowning deep. Is there hope still left for me? I can't breathe, I'm calling out. Break these chains, remove my doubt. Light the way, don't let me fall. God, are you still hearing now? Oh, lift me high. Oh, clear my mind. Oh, I need grace. Hold me close, don't fade away.
Yeah. Yeah. They tell me faith is simple, they tell me trust the plan, but they don't feel the weight of doubt when you barely understand. I've been wrestling my demons, I've been battling my past, trying to build a future when the present moving fast. I've been searching for some peace in the middle of the fight. I've been crying in the dark, waiting for a beam of light. Tell me when the war is over, will the scars still fade? Will the ones who stood tall still be calling his name? I ain't folding, I ain't quitting, I just need a breath to take. Every loss gon' be redeemed, every soul gon' find its place. I ain't rising, I can feel it, but the battle's far from done. If the fight is what it takes, then let the fire make me strong.
I can't breathe, I can't see. Every burden's weighing me. Lost in silence, drowning deep. Is there hope still left for me? I can't breathe, I'm calling out. Break these chains, remove my doubt. Light the way, don't let me fall. God, are you still hearing now? Oh, lift me high. Clear my mind. I need grace. Hold me close, don't fade away.
I've been hit, I've been torn, but I was built to stand through storms. Every night, every tear proves I'm stronger than my fear. Tell the saints, tell the lost, Zion calls, now count the cost. Ain't no quit, ain't no shame, we gon' rise up in his name. I'll be floating way up in the sky now. Ain't no weight holding me, I ain't tied down. If you tryna see the plan, take the high route. It's that latter day way, let's ride out.